To be going on, but I don't think that's strong enough to undermine. When you start looking at all the corporations, when you look at what NASCAR just did to say they're not going to allow the Confederate flag, when you look at what's going on in Congress, they want to bring down all the Confederate statues now. So I think some very good is going on. Yes, with whatever you do, you're always going to have that negative element that come in and try to destroy it. But overall, I really believe that the movement is not going to go away. I really believe that the murder of um, uh, George Floyd is a catalyst to what we're seeing because once again, there is literally no way. And let me say this, Andre. The problem that we've been having in America is not African Americans saying there's an injustice. We've been having an issue with white people who are not racist, but they're silent. What we're seeing now is those same white people are now saying we're not going to be silent anymore. And that's the difference that you're seeing. That's the major difference that you're seeing. See, it was a time where I would cry out, listen, I'm being abused, I'm being mistreated. And good white people who weren't, racist, they may say, Will, are you just over exaggerating? It can't be like that. I have a friend who's a police officer. My cousin's a police officer. It can't be that bad. But now you have them actually starting to see, wait a minute, where there's smoke, there's probably a fire. And so I'm excited that my white brothers and sisters are not being silent anymore. And I really do see some great changes on the horizon.
All right. If you're just joining us, this is Let's Talk St. Kitts Nevis. We're speaking with Dr. Will Moreland, an African American who can relate so much to what is we're seeing happening around the world with racial injustice. And he's speaking to us about that. He's going to be with us for the next 15 minutes or so. All right, Dr. Will, I want to also talk about the Caribbean because we're here in the Caribbean. We are a bit more fortunate in that as predominantly black people living in the region, some of the issues that we see happening in the U.S. Are not necessarily happening here. Yes, there are issues of classism. We see classism happening. There are issues of police brutality in some of the countries across the region. But generally, people in the Caribbean tend to, for the most part, live at peace when it comes to ethnicity and racial across the lines racially. However, we can relate in a number of ways because we've seen for many decades the abuse that people of color have gone through in the U.S. and even in Europe. And some of us who have migrated to the U.S. have also experienced it ourselves. How do you think the protest actions and what's happening, how do you link it to the Caribbean? How can we be impacted? And how can we also impact what's going on in the U.S.?
That's a great question. So for me, it's all about learning wherever you are. One of the things that I love about the Caribbean and one of the things that I love about St. Martin is one of the major reasons why I moved here. Here in St. Martin, we have 130 plus different nationalities. I think that is amazing when you can have all these different perspectives because at the end of the day, we're all going the same way, meaning we all just want to enjoy life. We all just want to provide for our families. So for the Caribbean, this is my prayer for the Caribbean is that they would look at what is going on in the United States. They will look at what has went on through colonization, even here in the Caribbean and in throughout Europe, and learn from it and say, okay, who do we want to be? What's going to be our identity? We can see what happened to the U.S. We can see what happens when you allow this to just fester and fester and fester. So, what issues do we have here in the Caribbean that we need to start addressing critically and in a timely manner so it won't explode like a volcano, like what's going on in London right now? I lived in Europe for 15 years, and so I saw some injustices there. In Germany, we all remember what happened with the Holocaust. You know, one of the quotes that I always like to say is, for evil to continue, all that needs to happen is for good people to remain silent. So, what's going on in the Caribbean that we want to change, that needs to be changed? What are those underlining conversations that you're having at your dinner table that you know is not right? It's not time for complaining, it's time for action. And so I'm calling, as you know, I work with government leaders all around the world. I'm calling for leaders to be leaders. I'm calling for leaders to have courage to say what is not right and what needs to be fixed. And so specifically here in the Caribbean, as you mentioned, the classism, and how do we deal with that? What do we want to be known for? Do we want to be known for an all inclusive environment? And can that exist? Of course, it can exist, and it only happens. Relationships only get better when you communicate. So we need to start bringing all these parties together, all these different nationalities, and all these different perspectives, and we need to start having these uncomfortable conversations that lead to a better Caribbean for today and tomorrow.
Indeed. On that note as well, and I want to talk a bit about you mentioned the protest actions in the UK, and we've seen an attempt to have persons who were involved with the slave trade back in the over 400 years ago, statues that were erected in their honor are being removed. We've seen it happen in the U.S., in the UK, in the U.S. as it comes to the Confederate flag and persons who were involved in the Civil War that were against, or rather, that were supportive of slavery. Is this the beginning? Can we begin to see? Can we say, as people of color, that this is the beginning of people realizing the horrors of slavery and what it really? Because whenever you try to have a discussion with someone, especially a white person, about slavery, they were like, slavery happened over 400 years ago. Move on, man. We see the UK Prime Minister, or then Prime Minister, coming to Jamaica and telling the Jamaican Parliament that we need to move on from slavery. And there are some people in the Caribbean who actually agree with that. So are we to then just maybe see this and say, okay, maybe people are beginning to realize that, yes, slavery may have happened years ago, hundreds of years ago, but it still has an impact on our life today?
Man, you're definitely right. I laugh whenever someone tells me that we should just move on and get over it. Just move on and get over it. Well, yes, I believe that's true. You should move on and get over it. But before you move on and get over it, there's some things that need to take place. There's some acknowledgments that need to take place. If you think about your house, if your house gets burned down, and you go to your house every single day and you complain about it getting burned down, yes, you need to get over it and move on, but there's some things that need to happen. Maybe some insurance needs to kick in so you can move on. And so that's what I always tell people about slavery. Yes, I'm willing to move on if the acknowledgement that, and as you say, when you talk to white people in present day, what they're trying to say is, I don't want to be associated with it. You're making me feel like it was my fault. But at the same time, they need to acknowledge that they benefited from it. And one of the examples that I always use is, I use my great grandfather and their great grandfather. When both of our grandfathers went to start a company, your grandfather was able to start a company. My grandfather was not able to start a company because of the color of his skin. Now, your family has been able to benefit from your grandfather starting his company, buying his house, being able to take out a loan so he can now build on that house. Now he was able to now build on that house, build his business. He was then able to now send you and your parents to college. Your parents were able to now inherit a house so they could then build their house, and then they could help you get into college. So if they don't realize that they've been impacted in a positive way because of slavery, even when you look here in St. Martin went independent in the year 2010. They went independent in the year 2010. Some of the challenges that they're facing is realizing to establish a government, to establish a country is very hard when you have to do it the right way. What I mean by that is when you look at America that was built on the backs of slaves. If I can start my company, Andre, and you can start your company, and I can have employees and don't have to pay them, how much faster would your company grow if you didn't have to pay your employees and you could work them from 6 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. at night?
Yep.
That's what we're looking at. See, that it's very easy to say you built a successful company like that. It's very easy when you didn't have to pay anybody to do it. But then look at me and say, what's taking you so long? Well, I'm doing it the right way. St. Martin is trying to do it the right way. They don't have slaves that they could just use for free labor. We now have to figure out a social system, a medical system. How are we going to take care of our most vulnerable individuals? Well, back in slavery times, they didn't have to worry about that. If you got sick or you weren't profitable anymore, they would kill you and throw you in the river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if I told that same slave owner, I need you to pay insurance for your slave, I need you to provide housing for your slave, well, then that slave owner wouldn't be that successful. And so for them to say, get over it and move on, I think is so disingenuous. And it really is, that once again, superior mindset. It's once again easy to tell me to get over it and move on versus you realizing that you benefited from it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about reparations. I think it would be the next appropriate question, but I know we're limited on time, and there is one issue I want to touch on before you go, and that is you made a very good analogy. I saw you on your Facebook post yesterday where you pointed out to someone who asked the question, and we hear this all the time, especially with Black Lives Matter movement, that black on black crime is on a high, and why is it that black Americans not focus on black on black crime before even thinking about Black Lives Matter? In other words, all lives matter, and by the way, we're killing ourselves, so why not focus on that as opposed to what they're protesting about? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so once again, it's about really who's pushing the narrative, because when you really look at crime is not really about color. Crime is about proximity, meaning the people who live closest to you are the people who are going to commit crimes to you. So if we look at the numbers, if we look at Latino on Latino, white on white crimes, more white people kill white people than black people kill white people because it's about proximity. More white people rob white people because it's about proximity. So it's not about color. It's not about black on black crime. It's not white on white crime. It's about proximity. When you look at who's in your neighborhood, that's probably who's going to rob you. That's probably who you're going to have issues with. So whenever someone tries to bring up, and the example that I use, just a short, quick example, if your kid came to you and said, I'm hungry, can you feed me, mommy or daddy? And you turned to them and said, well, I just saw your report card and you had a C and you had a D on your report card. When you bring your report card up to all A's, then I'll think about feeding you. That's the same cruelty and insensitivity that I hear when someone says, well, yes, police are killing you, but if you would stop killing yourself, then we would go fix the police. No, that's not how that works. I shouldn't have to fix everything for me to be protected by the people who get paid from my taxes to protect me. And so when we start looking at that and start talking about that, it's always just funny to me. And what I'm finding out, especially over the last 2 months of having these discussions, literally with people all around the world, The people who really want to get it, Andre, and really want to be a part of the change, they're going to get it, realize it, and make the necessary adjustments in their thinking and in their life. But the people who really just are, I was just reading a post last night, and this gentleman, he was just hell bent on keeping his mindset, his frame of thinking to make it seem like there really is no issue. I found out that trying to convince those people is just a waste of time and a waste of breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Dr. Moreland, it is precisely 50 minutes going up to the top of the hour, and I know you have to run. So, again, I want to take this time to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us on the show. It's a pleasure to have you, and we certainly have to have this conversation continued at some other point.
We definitely do, man. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to coming back to your show.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. You have a great day. Okay, then. All right. That's Dr. Will Moreland, motivational speaker and personal development, life coach, originally from the U.S., African-American. He now lives in St. Martin, speaking with us here on Let's Talk St. Kitts and Nevis, as we're talking about racial injustice in the United States. We have about 40 minutes to go, but we're going to take a break and come back. We'll continue our discussion on the topic. I may have a guest on the other side of the line. You don't want to miss this. This is Let's Talk St. Kitts Nevis right here on Voice of the Caribbean Radio at voiceofthecaribbean.net. We go up until 11 a.m. We'll be right back.
Simply the best sound in Caribbean radio. This is VOC Radio.
Auto Plus Car Wash, located on the Collins Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Bring your car to Auto Plus Car Wash to remove water stains, wiper marks. Get your doors, roof panel cleaned, seat floor mats, buffing, headlights, and engine wash. You get quality service at the best price at Auto Plus Car Wash. They really care for your car. Call 765-5140 or visit them on the Collins Street Gut, Bastyr, St. Kitts. Auto Plus Car Wash, where the service is number one.
For all your printing needs at top-notch quality, go to Digital Print Plus, located on Princess Street, Bastyr, St. Kitts. At Digital Print Plus, you get the best in business cards, letterheads, envelopes, wristbands, tent cards, rack cards, flyers, brochures, logo designs, posters, photos, architectural designs, 3D renderings, and so much more. Digital Print Plus gives you the best quality at competitive prices. Contact us at 767-7468 or email digitalprintskn@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook at digitalprintskn. Digital Print Plus, for all your printing needs at the best quality.
Now you can have SKN Newsline on the go. Introducing SKN Newsline Android mobile app. Search SKN Newsline in the Google Play Store. Download the app free and stay up to date with TV news in St. Kitts and Nevis in the palm of your hands. With this app, you can watch your news reports, watch our live news feed on SKN Newsline TV, engage with us and other app users in the chat room, look at our special features, send us news tips, and call us directly. It's news on the go. The SKN Newsline Android mobile app. Download it free today.
Banners, commercial signs, decal printing, canvas prints, license plates, posters. We at Multigraphics are dedicated to providing quality products and service to our customers. Our team takes pride in the craftsmanship and is passionate about its work. Every job, large or small, is important. Most of our customers come to us through referrals. That's because our number one priority is service. We serve a wide variety of customers, such as restaurants, retail stores, manufacturers, trucking companies, and many more. Our capabilities include design, production, and installation. How can we help? We are located at Bird Rock at the Woods Right compound. Call us at 869-763-1511 or 784-491-7599. Multigraphics.
KVK Enterprises at Boyd's Housing Development, Trinity Parish, St. Kitts. For all your t-shirt printing, banners and signs, promotional products, shipping, motivational speeches, computer classes, agro-processing, art and craft, and desktop publishing. Come to KVK Enterprises at Boyd's Housing Development, Trinity, St. Kitts. Telephone 661-0118 or 765-7270. Email drkhrystus@kvklives.com or visit www.kvklives.com. KVK Enterprises.
You missed a very great interview we had with Dr. Will Moreland, an African-American motivational speaker and life coach, speaking with us on his experience, what he has experienced in the U.S. As an African-American, and what needs to be done to help fix the problem that we're seeing happening in the U.S. today. Now we're going to dedicate the final furlong of the show to a look at what's going on internationally, and one of the things that we spoke about in the interview with Dr. Moreland was the fact that in some countries right now in the U.S. there are talks about removing the Confederate statue. We're seeing a lot of action happening in that regard. The statue is honoring Confederate leaders. In the UK, we saw a statue being removed and thrown in the lake of an individual who benefited from the slave trade, or was actually a slave trader. And we've seen a lot of this happening now. Now we're going to be giving you some insights into that. The BBC did a very good extensive piece on that, and we're going to share some of it. We won't be able to do all of it for the remainder of the time we have, but just to let you know that this program will rebroadcast for the rest of the week from Wednesday on the way to Friday at 10 a.m. right here on Voice of the Caribbean Radio. So make sure you do stay tuned to that. All right, so we're going to give you that report now from the BBC, an extensive piece they did on the removal of slave traders' statue, which toppled in Bristol as thousands joined anti-racism protests in the UK.
Thousands of people took part in further anti-racism protests across Britain today, with the statue of a 17th century slave trader pulled down in Bristol. The monument to Edward Colston, which had stood in the city centre for more than a century, was toppled and pushed into the river. The latest demonstrations came 13 days after the killing of George Floyd by US police, and despite the government here urging people not to take part because of the risk of catching or spreading coronavirus. Tonight, Boris Johnson defended the right to protest peacefully, but said the weekend's demonstrations had been subverted by thuggery. From Bristol, John Kay sent us this report.
300 years after his death, Edward Colston's fall from grace. For centuries, he took pride of place in Bristol, celebrated as a merchant, politician and philanthropist. Now reviled for his part in the slave trade.
That statue represents years of oppression, it represents years of hurt and just a lot of emotion and hatred that has been built up inside of us. We've internalized for years, and that coming down today hopefully signifies change. Hopefully we've sent a message not just to everyone in the UK or the USA, worldwide.
Cast in bronze, now daubed with graffiti, one of Bristol's most famous sons. Some protesters knelt on his neck, a reference to the death of George Floyd across the Atlantic. This had begun as a Black Lives Matter demonstration, but it ended in the historic docks where Colston's ships once sailed.
Gone. You're gone.
Jasmine is a trainee teacher.
What do you say to somebody who lives in Bristol who's horrified by the fact that this is gone?
People might say it's vandalism, but black people have to walk these streets. Black slaves built Bristol. We have to walk these streets and see that statue of Colston's every day. That's what it means. That statue is a kick in the face to all black people.
There has been a growing campaign in recent years to remove Colston's name from buildings across the city, but many feel destroying the statue was the wrong way to do it. Tonight, there was a small counter-protest. claiming local history had been trashed.
Sheer vandalism and disorder completely is unacceptable, and it's right actually the police follow up on that and make sure that justice is undertaken with those individuals that are responsible for such disorderly and lawless behaviour.
Avon and Somerset police say they deliberately took a low-key approach to the whole protest due to sensitivities, safety and social distancing.
Some people will look at this and think, hang on a minute, you should have intervened, you should have stepped in, you should have at least challenged the behaviour that was happening.
But this was a very difficult policing operation. There's a lot of context that sits around it, and I believe we did the right thing.
No regrets?
No regrets.
Well, this evening, people are coming down here, laying placards, and many of them just standing, looking in disbelief at what has happened here. That in one afternoon, this city has challenged its history and changed its landscape. John Kay, BBC News, Bristol.